In less than a week, voters in the United States will choose whether Kamala Harris or Donald Trump will be seated in the Oval Office.
Well, the Democratic candidate and nominee Kamala Harris vowed to serve all Americans if elected president, as she sought to contain a fallout from a remark by President Joe Biden that might suggest otherwise.
Now, her presidential campaign, it's been forced off pace by the remarks from President Joe Biden that appear to label Trump supporters garbage. In the closing pitch of a presidential campaign, Harris has promised to put the country above the party and above herself. The U.S. Vice President is spending the final week of the campaign telling voters that she would respect those who disagree with her. She says her rival Donald Trump is a threat to democracy. However, she was forced to distance herself from the President Joe Biden's remarks.
To score political points.
Listen, I think that, first of all, he clarified his comments, but let me be clear, I strongly disagree with any criticism of people based on who they vote for. You heard my speech last night and continuously throughout my career. I believe that the work that I do is about representing all the people, whether they support me or not. And as President of the United States, I will be a president for all Americans, whether you vote for me or not. That is my responsibility, and that's the kind of work that I've done my entire career, and I take it very seriously.
Seizing on the comments made by the U.S. President, Donald Trump hit back at both Biden and Harris, saying you can't lead America if you don't love Americans. Donald Trump also climbed into a garbage truck as he arrived in Wisconsin and answered questions while wearing a high-waist jacket.
I think the Democrats have done a very poor job. We're leading in every state. We're leading big, and I think that the comment made by really both of them, because there are really two of them, about being garbage, maybe 250 million people, they shouldn't be talking. That's like deplorable for Hillary. This is the deplorable for Hillary. And I think this is worse, actually. For Joe Biden to make that statement, it's really a disgrace.
Now, this comes after U.S. President Joe Biden's supposed attempt to call out racist remarks by a speaker at a campaign rally for Trump.
Just the other day, a speaker at his rally called Puerto Rico a floating island of garbage. Well, let me tell you something. I don't know the Puerto Rican that I know, or Puerto Rico where I'm in my home state of Delaware. They're good, decent, honorable people. The only garbage I see floating out there is his supporters. His demonization of is unconscionable, and it's un-American. It's totally contrary to everything we've done, everything we've been.
Biden sought to clarify his comment on social media a little later. The U.S. president said, and I'm going to quote what he said, "Earlier today, I referred to the hateful rhetoric about Puerto Rico spewed by Trump supporters at his Madison Square Garden rally as garbage, which is the only word I can think of to describe it." Now, the White House also tried to clarify his remarks.
Just to clarify, he was not calling Trump supporters garbage, which is why he wanted to make sure that we put out a statement that clarified what he meant and what he was trying to say.
All right, and our correspondent Susan Tehrani from New York talks about what was Vice President Kamala Harris's focus as she campaigned for the 2024 election. Listen to this.
Vice President Kamala Harris continues to emphasize her commitment to safeguarding democratic institutions and access for health care, particularly in those swing states, which are crucial as this race tightens. Harris attended rallies where she highlighted her plans to expand health care access and address economic inequalities, framing these as being central to a fair and stable democracy. Her approach has resonated with younger voters and minority communities, positioning herself as a steady leader against Donald Trump. The VP's team believes that her stance on democracy and social welfare and possibly abortion will ultimately differentiate her campaign.
Susan also gave us an understanding of former President Donald Trump's campaign focus on a Wednesday. Take a look.
The former president concentrated rallying his base in Michigan and North Carolina, strategically appealing to working class and rural voters with a promise to cut taxes and support small businesses. Also reverse Democratic economic policies. Trump's campaign in Michigan emphasized energy independence and also trade protection, themes that resonate with Rust Belt voters. His message is aimed at portraying himself as a leader who will combat perceived government overreach, positioning his economic platform as an antidote to what he describes as excessive regulation and bureaucratic mismanagement by Democratic leadership.
And for more on this, joining us live on the broadcast is Democrat strategist Christopher Hale from Washington, D.C. Thank you so much for joining us on WION The World is One.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate being here.
Mr. Hale, it's the final stretch, of course, for the presidential hopefuls. It's a crucial week. Biden's comments recently, which appear to label Trump supporters as garbage, that sparked an uproar, with Kamala Harris now having to distance herself. She said, of course, that she will be a president for all Americans and she will respect those who disagree with her. Do you believe this will have any sort of a bearing on voter sentiments, or do you think at this stage in this race to the White House, voters have pretty much made up their mind?
I think it's very marginal at most. I actually think what happened on Sunday with a comic, as you had in the segment before, a comic in New York City at Madison Square Garden calling Puerto Rico an island of garbage. I think that actually is more resonant. There's 500,000 Puerto Rican voters in Pennsylvania. And I think that what Kamala Harris did really well and what Joe Biden did really well is after the comments, he himself clarified what he said, and she immediately distanced herself from the comments. I think that was actually very good damage control. I will say this, though. It was really smart of President Trump just a few hours ago to appear on a garbage truck with his logo on it, wear the vest of a garbage pickup person. I think that resonates. He's trying to hammer it home. He mentioned Hillary Clinton's deplorable comments. Those deplorable comments did cost her in 2016. And look, so does it have an effect on the margin of voters? It's really small. Yes. But this election, as I've said time and again, will be decided by just tens of thousands of voters throughout a few battleground states. So I think it could matter.
Christopher, and as you mentioned earlier as well, Trump was quick to use that garbage comment to his advantage. He's been trying to pull all stops to ensure that he carries out a counterattack on the Democratic camp, using it to his advantage instead of theirs. At this point, all opinion polls have pretty much had Harris and Trump neck to neck. How do you place the two camps? We're days away from D-Day now.
Look, if anyone is telling you they know who's going to win next Tuesday, probably should remove that person from your life because they're lying to you. It's just the reality of it is this is a 50-50 race. At this point, to offer anything other than that is witchcraft. It's sorcery. It's just not. There's no being able to tell more than that. I will say this. I think that if there's an advantage from my side, if there's an advantage for the Democrats and Kamala Harris, we have a very strong, and I've seen it in the flesh, ground operation that's built on years and years of work, decades of work, in fact. So in marginal races, campaigns matter. Good campaigns cannot cannot come back from a race where you're down 4 or 5 points. But a great campaign can bring you back from a point down or a tied race. So if Kamala Harris wins on Tuesday, particularly in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, which probably is the key state, I think that great ground operation will be the reason why she gets over to the top.
Right. Also, of course, let's talk about the major issues for voters this time around. It's immigration, it's economy, and it's abortion rights. That being said, how do you think both nominees are positioned when it comes to these major issues going into the election?
Look, I think that Trump struggles to stay on topic. If this was a policy election, if policy drove the day, if Trump ran on policy alone, my party would not stand a chance. Those issues you named, the only one that we are winning on is abortion rights. We tried pretty hard to put that at the top of voters' minds. Trump has somewhat successfully distanced himself from the most stringent anti-abortion forces in his party. But his struggle to stay on message, to stay on policy, it gives us an opening. And one thing I will say is economic issues. Kamala Harris started this race down 15 points to Donald Trump, but there's been a strengthening economy in the United States. The inflation has slowed down significantly. And so she's actually almost tied on that issue. And they always say it's the economy stupid. That's like a phrase, that's a catchphrase in American politics. And if it's the economy stupid, the reality of it is this once again remains a 50-50 race.
Christopher Hale, thank you so much for joining us on World DNA, and I must say I really appreciate your candid and honest responses to all our questions. We'll get to know soon enough what happens on the 5th of November, and thank you so much for joining us.
We'll see you soon.
Yes.
Thank you.